Hello and welcome. I am the legendary creative Daniel Zappia, and this is Design School. Welcome back to Design School. Today we are taking the logos to the computer. We are digitizing them. That's what's going to happen. Let's get into some logos, shall we? So do you remember what your homework assignment was? Sketch the 20 logo ideas, but then you were supposed to flush out a couple, right? So let's check out my work. So this was my 20 ideas right here, okay? And I decided I was kind of going to go with the camera idea, maybe an old-timey camera, mixed with something like this, right? Here's what I came up with. So here are the elements that I decided to design, and I wanted to combine kind of an old-timey video camera with some kind of not a shield, but I do love shields, a container. So, bam, the Zappia Adventures, right? There should be an S there, but just ignore that. Now there's two options. The first is if you have a scanner, the easiest thing to do is just to scan that bad boy and put it on an SD card, and that SD card you then put in your computer. Easy. Now if you don't have that, all you need is a phone. If you have a phone that has a scanning app, go ahead and use that, but if not, a picture will work just fine. Now ideally, you do this on a flat surface. As long as you match the angle, it should be just fine. Now you have a digital version of your sketch. Now the next step is to take the picture of your logo or scan of your logo into a design software. Ideally, in my opinion, you use Illustrator or CorelDRAW. They both work in vectors. You can also use Inkspace, which if you go back to episode 1, I showed you where to download that. Worst case scenario, you can use Photoshop. You don't want to use Photoshop. But if that's all you have and all you're doing is digital work, go for Photoshop. That'll work just fine. But just know I am going to be working in Illustrator. See you there. Two things before we hop into the video clips of me actually building the logo. The first is that it turns out it's about a 40-minute video, and I'm going to cut it up into 10-minute clips, maybe 5 to 10-minute clips depending on how long it actually takes. That way it's easier for you all to digest. So today's video is going to focus on workflow, and it'll break down how I build a logo. A lot of people want to build it from the ground up. It's better to dissect it and to really build it base in pieces. The other thing is OBS did not record correctly yet again. I thought I had it fixed, but I didn't. Essentially, it recorded most of Illustrator, but it hid certain things like different panels and menu options. So you'll see my mouth click kind of off-screenish, and then object will change. And I'll do my best to describe what's happening and tell you what tools I used, and maybe throw up a couple images on screen at the same time. But as of right now, let's get into it. Now I do go a little quickly, so do your best to keep up. You probably will have to rewatch a couple of sections. When I first started making the logo, I didn't think, hey, let's record this as if I'm talking. I just recorded it as, okay, let's make this logo. So I apologize, there are a few sections where I go really, really fast. So I'm going to do my best to guide you through what I'm doing, and I'm going to start right now. Once you have your logo inside of Illustrator, you're going to want to duplicate it. And the fastest way to do that in Illustrator is to select the image, hold Alt, and drag. And when you do that, you'll have two images. Now we want to isolate the camera first. We want to break this logo down into pieces, that way it's easier to digest. So we're going to make a mask. That's what I did right there. I made a square above the camera itself, and then I pushed Control 7, or if you're on a Mac, Apple 7, or Command. I think it's called Command nowadays. I'm kind of old. It was called Apple back in the day. Anyways, Command 7, boom. You have now made a mask of one of your objects. That way, it's just easier. You can see only the camera. Now what we're doing here is, it's best to build your logos, or anything in Illustrator really, with actual shapes. So I'm breaking this camera down, this logo image of a camera down, into shapes. And what you can see is that the majority of my camera is made out of rectangles, squares, and circles. And that's really all it's made of, aside from the Z, but that's just a Z. So what I'm doing here is I am simply playing with one square. You saw me made it. I drew out a square, and now if I need another one, I simply do the same duplicate technique. I hold Alt down, and I drag and click. And that makes a duplicate. So now I'm just kind of, I'm playing. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that each square is built just like the one on the left. And you want to focus mainly on like objects. So see how I'm not going from the top down. I'm doing all squares, and I'm doing it in sections. I built the base, then I built the top, then I built the very top. Now I'm moving from the base out to the left.
and we're slowly just eyeballing it. We're not using a grid. You can use a grid if you want to get really, really specific, but I know this is gonna be an asymmetrical piece anyways. It's not symmetrical. It's gonna be lopsided on one side. I know that. The arm sticks out way farther than the half circle on the other side. But we're gonna build it as close as we can. And over time, we're gonna make edits and edits and edits, and it's gonna look just the way we want. So now I'm building the arm. And I believe this is the first time you're gonna see OBS fail me. And I click, and I go to rotate the object, and it rotates, but you don't see me actually rotate the object. And the way you do that is you'd go up to the menu bar, and it's object, rotate, and then I just rotate 90 degrees. And the reason I rotated at 9 degrees with object rotate, aside from just clicking the side and rotating it myself, is it's perfect. Now we're still building the arm, and like you're saying, it's that easy. These are just rectangles. It's nothing fancy. I'm not having to whip out some crazy tool. I'm just building an object with rectangles. And now that I have the rectangles and squares done, we're going to move on to the circles. Two circles, so we're going to align them with the box. And that's just object align. Align to center. And now those two circles are centered in that middle box. It's really simple once you learn these little tricks. And this is what I was talking about me going too fast. I'm using a lot of tricks without thinking, hey, they don't know you can hold Alt and drag and all of a sudden you duplicated something. So apologies for that. I get better later on. I start to slow down and think, okay, how would I actually talk through this? And I did. I started to talk while I was doing the design, so that way it kind of matched up better. So for now, did the Z. I just went with Arial Black, I believe, for now, just because it's a big, basic, fat font. No big deal. We're going to change it a little later, but for now, we're keeping it like that. So next we're going onto the little nub that you see on the right hand side. And for that we're taking a circle. Then we're taking the scissor tool. The scissor tool is actually hidden under the eraser tool. It took me a little while to find it because I almost never use the scissor tool. Cut this circle in half. So you just click the 2 points at the top and drag, and you can delete that one, and now you have a half circle. So if you can see, my logo is made up of squares, rectangles, and circles. Nothing complicated, really simple. Now your logo might not be that complicated, and I'm going to go over how to do that. Your logo might not be basic shapes, and it might not be able to make out of basic shapes, or you might not be able to make it out of basic shapes. And I'm going to show you how to draw that with a pen tool in another episode. But for now, it's always best to do perfect shapes, because that way they're already perfect. You can tell the one on the right is made with perfect shapes, and the one on the left is made with my janky hands trying to sketch it. It's lopsided, it's crooked, it's goofy, but you know what? It got the job done. So now I'm going to use this to create a little thumbnail. This is where I first used the Pathfinder tool. See, I click off, that's the Pathfinder tool, and if OBS actually recorded correctly, you would see the Pathfinder menu right now. It didn't, so you can't see it. What the Pathfinder menu does is it allows you to take two objects and to subtract from the objects, like I just did there, or add to the objects. But essentially, I took a big circle, I laid it over a smaller circle, and then I cut the big circle away from the small circle, and that what gives you that little thumbnail effect. Which, when we colorize that, and we add some color to this little laser, it's going to give it that nice little shine, nice little bevel effect without having to actually add a bevel. Now the next thing we're going to do here is, we're lining it up to see how close I got it. I like to center things a lot just to make sure they're pretty accurate. So when I do that, I notice that the top looks a little different than it does on the right and it does on the left. And I decided, you know what, it'll probably look better if it's a little thinner. Maybe I'll play with it. You know, that's probably the most fun part of what I'm going to do. Is 90% of what I do is play. I play. So here's another time where I use the Pathfinder tool. This time I'm going to take these three arms, or these three rectangles, and use the Pathfinder tool, which you can't see, but I'm using it right now. That's why my mouse is off to the right. And I'm going to click, boom. It took the three rectangles and turned it into one, kind of a Z shape. And that's basically it. We're going to look at the left object and the right object right now. And by object, I mean cameras. And we're kind of going to evaluate what things we want to tweak. And the best part, as I just said, is we play. What do we want it to look like? You know, right? I believe I start to add a rectangle at the top to play on depth. When we get to the very end of this logo, I end up adding a smaller rectangle at the bottom, and that really, in my opinion, solidifies its look as a camera. It kind of looks like a camera right now. It also could read as a lunchbox or something else weird. But when I add that rectangle at the bottom, which you won't see until next video, or maybe even the video after that, it really solidifies its look as a camera. And that's pretty much it for this video. I just want to show you over my process. I mean, look at this. Look at what I just made out of the Shapes tool, the Selection tool, and the Pathfinder tool. We made a camera. Now, you may say it doesn't look like a camera, but trust me. Give it some time, give it some context. When I finish it up with the logo, with the rest of the logo, it will in fact look like a camera. That's about it for this episode of Design School. I hope you learned a lot. I know I went really fast. You may have to rewatch this a couple times. Feel free to ask me any questions down below. Next time, I will continue on with this logo. I didn't want to make it run too long. We're already at 10 minutes. I didn't want this to be a 40-minute video, which it is, and I haven't even added color yet. So I want to break these episodes up. I also prefer to give you guys more context and more videos each day rather than one video once a week. So I'm trying to stretch this series out. I'm trying to make as many people happy as I can. No homework assignment for the next 3 days.
Take that, Maynard G. Crab!
And as I said, this is going to be a 3 or 4 part episode. So this is episode 3 of Design School. Thank you guys for watching. Feel free to ask me as many questions as you can down below. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.
Are you hyped for a new intro, but you don't want to wait for a free one? I offer fully custom paid intros as well. Send your idea to the email on screen now, and I'll hit you back with a custom quote. For those of you who prefer to wait for a free one, good luck to you on Monday.